Hey everybody, I am here with pitching ninja legend, Adam Ottavino, who I think I called Blitzball or something like that at some point. How are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
So we were just talking off camera, but you grew up in New York, so did I. Uh, how did you find the baseball in New York?
I think it was really competitive when I was a kid. It was kind of like that golden age, I think, for interest in baseball in the city, like because the Yankees were in like kind of budding dynasty, and Mets were pretty competitive too. And I think one thing about New York that gets overlooked sometimes with baseball is like the Latin influence. Like we have so many Dominican kids, Puerto Rican kids, who are living in New York, and baseball's their sport. So, I felt like it was pretty strong, especially in the travel teams. When I was growing up.
And did Dylan Betances go to your same high school? Is that true?
No, he played for the same youth program I played for, youth service. He was younger than me, but so I saw him from a young age.
I assume he was giant when he was young too.
Yeah, huge, and just he was like the ultimate, ultimate projectability guy. Like, will this work out? Will he get control of his limbs and grow into his body? And then, he went from like throwing 80 to like 98 like in a year. So it worked out.
So were you, and I think that happens, right? With bigger kids, sometimes you're looking at them and they can't control their limbs and then they grow into it. Were you always kind of a top player at the younger ages? Or did you grow into your body too?
So I played up with the older kids, and so like when I was 10, I was like on an 11 and 12-year-old team, and I was a good player during that time period. I felt like when I was 12, I was exceptional. But then when the field got bigger, so 13 and 14 age, I wasn't very good all of a sudden. The field was just too big for me. I hadn't grown into my body. I was kind of a late puberty guy. So just had a hard time making that adjustment. Played a lot of second base during that time, and just like I had skill, but I didn't have any strength or power at that time. So that took a little while to catch back up. When I hit my growth spurt, I think when I was 15 is when I started, being good again.
So do you think that can be a blessing in disguise sometimes, that if you're competitive and you're smaller, you learn to compete, and kind of some of the bigger kids, maybe it comes too natural and they're already dominating, and then they don't learn what it means to compete.
Yeah, I think so. I think the way my dad always put it was, baseball's kind of like a skill sport. You gotta work on the skills, and if your body cooperates and you become a great athlete, then you'll have both. But if you sit there and try to just rely on natural ability and don't train the skills, then you're going to be pretty far behind when you need them. So, we always just worked on the skill based stuff in the sport, as a hitting, fielding, and even in, pitching, obviously. So I felt like for me, when I did hit that growth spurt, it was like a seamless transition. Like I was able to just like take right off again.
That's it. So does your dad have a baseball background? I know that your dad is an actor and your mom is a teacher. Is that right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say like a baseball background. I mean, he played growing up and was a huge fan, but I think he was just a huge fan of baseball over the other sports. I think it led, more interest in it because of the strategy, and I think the variety of different size people that you see in the game, I think, was an attraction to him as well. But my dad, was kind of perfect because we lived a block from a park, and we had 8 ball fields on it, and he was an actor, so he had a lot of time where he wasn't working. So he was kind of able to take me to the park almost every day and coach my teams, and kind of he saw how obsessed I was, so he wanted to be there for me for all that.
How did he teach you, or did it come natural to balance academics and athletics? I mean, as somebody who's raised a kid, my kid is at Georgia Tech pitching, and we always had a rule: academics came first, then work on your sport, then you can do whatever you want. Whatever sport was in season, work on it, but be good at something was kind of my motto.
Yeah, well, I mean, my mom's a teacher, so obviously, and my dad's very smart as well. has a master's degree. And like, I mean, academics were obviously important. It was something that was always important. Like, got to do my homework, all that type of stuff. And I don't know. It was never, I don't think that we put either in front of the other. They were just both priorities. You know, I think baseball wasn't a priority for my family. It was a priority for me, which then made it a priority for my family. So, you know, I think my dad being an actor and chasing his passion lent himself to understanding that this was my passion and that needed to be supported. So, you know, more than anything, I think he dove into it all the way because I was in love with it. And you know, that was kind of the separator there, you know, with those things.
Do you ever feel that acting actually has a place in pitching? Like I know Arrieta at one point said, if you act it, you'll end up being it. So even if you feel not confident, not your best, if you act your best, then your body will respond to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're thinking about mindset out there, you know, or pitching presence, you know, I think definitely there's a lot of that. You know, at the beginning, maybe you're faking it until it's real. So, I mean, there's some acting there. I mean, no doubt. I mean, sometimes you try to sell certain things too. You know, try to sell a certain pitch to a hitter that, you know, try to make him really think that that's coming and then flip it on him or something. But I never really thought of it that way, I guess, with the acting influence. But yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, how you're presenting yourself on the mound is a huge part of, you know, who you are as a pitcher. So if that's created, then that's great. That's something that you implemented to get yourself to a higher level. So, you know, I think some of us, it comes naturally, you know, how your mound presence is, and some people, like, you definitely have to work for it.
So you ended up playing college ball. Did you have a choice of playing college ball? Were you seriously considering going pro out of high school, or was that just a natural decision?
I mean, I was drafted, but they never offered me a contract. It was still a draft and follow era that they wanted to push me towards junior college. And, you know, in my mind, like, I wanted to play pro ball. I think, you know, it just felt very attractive. But, you know, ultimately, I kind of knew in my heart that I wasn't really ready yet. I mean, I was 17 when I was drafted, and I was still pretty immature, I guess. So going to college definitely made the most sense for me. Junior college wasn't something that my parents supported, so they wanted me to go to college and get my education. So I think obviously it turned out great for me. Had good 3 years and was picked a lot higher after that. I was able to get started, and I wasn't terribly old, so it's kind of a no-brainer. But I mean, definitely at the moment, I was curious about maybe getting started.
What did you take from the college experience that you use today, even just maturity wise, just anything you gleaned from the game?
Well, I think, like, when I first got there, kind of navigating, you know, inter-team politics, like, you know, the older guys, and where I was going to fit in on the team. And, you know, I was very cocky, I think, at that time, but I was trying to also be a good teammate and figure out how all that kind of worked out. That was like my first real experience having to deal with that, where, you know, maybe I'm younger, but also know I could impact the team, and like, how do I do that without stepping on people's toes? So I think that was something that was the first time I had to deal with that. That kind of helped me going forward. And then also, I mean, I had never lifted weights at all until I got to college, so that was a huge influence on my career, was all my off the field training and off season work that I do. And that was the first introduction of how that could really help my career. And those guys did a great job kind of pushing me in that way. And those are just two things that immediately stand out. I mean, there's so many more things that I learned in my 3 years, but those are two things that immediately stand out for sure.
Do you still watch any college baseball, or are you just too busy to do that?
I catch myself watching it a little bit when I come across it on the cable, you know, especially like a highly ranked team or pitcher that catches my eye, or, you know, I'll definitely watch through the College World Series, you know, supers, stuff like that. But I'm mostly watching major league stuff. This year I'm a little more invested because I have a kid that I play catch with in quarantine. That's a catcher for Louisville. So I'm a little invested in what he's doing now. So I'm checking d1baseball.com, you know, which I didn't know existed till 2 weeks ago. And, you know, getting all my box score info there. And trying to see highlights, stuff like that.
I need to give them a shout out. I'm friends with those guys. They're good folks. I mean, I think they're great for growing the game and bringing attention to college baseball in general.
When I was in college, there was another website, and I can't remember the name for the life of me. It was pretty old school, like something with a hyphen in it, and it had all the run. It was like kind of like a spreadsheet. It just had like all the rundown. You could like, and links you could click to box score, and so I used to be really into it, obviously, when I was in school.
Who did you look up to as a baseball player when you were a kid?
I mean, I think during my generation, Ken Griffey Jr. and, Derek Jeter and, Frank Thomas and all those types of guys were the super duper stars when I was growing up. I think, I was a big Yankee fan growing up. So my favorite player was Brandon Williams. But, pitching wise, I was always more interested in the guys who had, interesting arsenals, not just the power pitchers. So like my favorite guys growing up were like David Cohn or like El Duque. I felt like they were artists out there. So that really spoke to me, like in my artistic side, and kind of intrigued me even further into pitching.
So, all right. You've said famously about the Babe Ruth matchup, and I've heard you talk about Ted Williams. How would you pitch to Ken Griffey?
Well, I never got to face him. I mean, I don't know.
Let's imagine it.
Nowadays, I'd probably get some sort of heat map that would help me out. But I don't know. He seems like a low ball hitter to me. So probably pitch him more across the top and try to steal a strike with a backdoor breaking ball and just try to feel him out. I like to read the swings within the at-bat. So hard to say, but obviously you got to get ahead of a guy like that.
So, Switch, I know you're a big photography guy. I started out in photography too, just as a hobby. Do you feel, and this is kind of a strange question because you probably haven't thought about it that much. Do you feel that at all that helps you in your approach to baseball, the attention to very little details that happen in photography, being able to pick up, maybe it's why you're attracted to photography to begin with, but being able to pick up very little minute details, maybe as a hitter changes his stance or something like that. Is there any overlap between the two, or do you like it because there's no overlap between the two?
I do think there's some overlap. I think the ability to kind of know what you're looking for before you see it. So that happens in both pitching and photography. Like sometimes when I'm looking for a photo I want to take, I kind of already know what I want, but I have to get to the right spot. I have to take my butt over to exactly the right place where that picture is going to be framed up the way I want it to. And, there's visualization there. And it's the same thing with pitching. I kind of know what I want my pitch to do before I throw it. And you kind of see it in your mind before you do it. And then the idea is to kind of match that, in practice, and physically. So I do think that there's some overlap there. I wouldn't say, a huge amount, but definitely in terms of like kind of preparation and visualization.
I mean, I found myself being able to coach a little better having read, like I can read players better when I'm looking through a camera for some reason sometimes. Yeah. And it's kind of cool. And I hadn't thought about it until I was actually looking at your stuff and then saying, maybe there is some kind of weird overlap between the two.
I think that also, like you said, the attention to detail too, like, if I'm walking around or driving around, I'm always kind of looking around and kind of taking it in and paying attention. And I think I do a good job of not being like so caught up like in my cell phone or whatever. And when I'm watching a baseball game, I do a good job of really paying attention. And there's always little things that you kind of pick up when you're watching something live and not just relying totally on data. I'm a visual learner. I do a much better job by watching and imitating other things. So I think that, maybe they're all kind of part of the same type of, just a personality trait, or it's just kind of the way certain people's brains work. Some people are a little more visually oriented. I think I'm one of those.
Interesting, because I know that you built out your own your own pitching lab when you were trying to, you couldn't find a partner or whatever, and you just wanted to work on stuff. Um, but you also had your analytics stuff built out. So do you find you find yourself more of a visual learner than actually taking the analytics of a pitch then?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I understand the numbers and everything, but for me, like I already kind of know what shapes I want to create. So I'm kind of working backwards from that. So a lot of times my process has been I'll record a video, a bullpen session with the Edgertronic, but also with the regular camera. And first I'll watch it on regular speed and I know what I'm looking for. So if I see something on regular speed, then I'll go back and look at what I did on in slow motion to create that. I don't necessarily need all the numbers all the time to shape like what I'm trying to do because I know what shapes I'm looking for, just based off experience and based off of what's missing in my arsenal. I kind of already know. Like I don't really necessarily need the numbers to confirm it. Now sometimes it's nice to have a number that you can't see with the naked eye, like thing like pitch efficiency or stuff like that. But for the most part, like I do think I do most of it just by watching a lot of video, more so than diving into graphs all the time.
Interesting. I mean, the weird thing I find is like even in my stuff, uh, I end up tweeting way more or taking way more video and showing the game that way because I think sometimes people are like, I didn't want any math. I don't want to be thinking about all this stuff. I just enjoy the beauty of baseball and how pitches work together and all that. So I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I just think nobody wants extra math, so I think certainly it's all become part of the game, and as a student of the game, you have to kind of dig into all of it and understand it and get up to speed with all of it. But I think still for me, I like to watch as much video as possible. Actually, it's another area where photography background kind of helps out because I know how to use these cameras. From the beginning, I know how to focus. I know what aperture means, like, and all that type of stuff. Where I think maybe there's a learning curve for some other guys with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. The other thing is really cool, and I don't know to what extent did the Edgertronic show you things that you couldn't feel, like seeing it visually, how it was coming off your hand in that much detail and slow motion. Were there things that just jumped out at you, like really surprised you at how your pitches worked?
Yeah, I think it's funny because even long before the Edgertronic became a thing, my dad would always say, like, it'd be really useful if we could get a really good clear picture of the ball at release out of your hand, because that's kind of where the action happens. And we were always experimenting with different grips and finger pressures on things, and sometimes that would take a really long time to get something figured out, whereas with the camera now you can kind of cut that down. So we already kind of knew that would be helpful. And then when I finally got to look at it, I got to see a little bit more of like, okay, like what finger is my last point of contact and how does that affect the spin I'm getting and all of that sort of things. I was a little surprised at, the way that my slider looked on the camera. I was a little surprised about really everything. I knew it was similar to that, but then there's always that last little bit that you can't feel.
Were you always able to spin the ball? I mean, do you think that's a natural skill, or do you think that that's something that you can acquire?
It's a tough question just because I've always been good at that. I mean, when I was younger, granted, I practiced it a lot. Like I threw breaking balls from a young age, younger than they recommend you to do so. And I was always throwing them and trying to create the shapes I saw on television, and just imitate the major leaguers I was in love with. And for me, like, I think I was just able to figure that out. But I think part of it, is physical. I mean, definitely, like I'm a lanky guy and I have very loose wrist and very loose elbow growing up, and certain hand size. And I just think all of that is a contributing factor in spin. But I don't know that we have all of that mastered and all of that figured out. There's still some things about it that confuse me. I mean, when trying to kill spin, I find it hard to do it. So I think, I think maybe it is kind of a physiological thing or something that is kind of innate in each person's skill set, but I'm never satisfied with just giving up. Like I always feel like there's something that you can do that can make yourself better, even if it's not natural to you.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you just made because I know that there traditionally throughout baseball, So it's like, don't throw a curveball before you can shave or whatever. But I find that there's a lot of pitchers. I think Kershaw threw a pretty young curveball. I know Bauer did when he was young. Barry Zito did when he was young. There are a lot of pitchers that threw breaking stuff when they were younger, and there's some maybe correlation to that and being able to throw it at a a more mature age.
Yeah, we just never bought into it. I think we just always felt like we could teach it in a way that wasn't harmful. And also, I guess the theory was, like if you don't have a great breaking ball or a great other pitch besides a fastball, you're probably not going to like get anywhere. So might as well just go for it. And, worst case scenario, like, well, career's probably going to end after high school anyway. So really didn't have much to lose. I felt like we would always just go for it. And that's kind of the way that we've lived it with pitching.
Yeah. And I think actually later studies have come out and said, you know what, a breaking ball is no more dangerous than a fastball for your arm. Because when you think about it, what are you trying to do with your breaking stuff? You're trying to throw it hard, right? I mean, you're not aiming it, you're trying to throw it. And a fastball is actually a little bit more stressful. At least some of the studies that came out say that a fastball is, but yet we were always taught back in the day that you don't want to do this because it naturally you think about it, and if you're twisting something, it just feels kind of weird. But now the science kind of caught up with what it's kind of counterintuitive a little bit.
Yeah, I even in like college, I threw a ton of breaking balls, and when I would get like tired in a game, I still felt like my breaking ball was sharp, and it was just like my fastball was a little like maybe not as fast, but my breaking ball would still be there. And I almost felt like with a tired arm, I could still throw great breaking pitches. And so I used to always kind of wonder, like, well, what is kind of putting me more at risk? Like, is it the fastball, which seems to be tiring me out quicker, or is it this pitch because my wrist is in a different position? Like, I don't know. I always had a hard time understanding it, but at the same time, like, I guess the biggest thing was just like my ambition to try to be as good as I could be kind of outweighed all the risk, anyway.
So are you driven like that in everything? I mean, is it always try to do the best that you can do in everything, or is baseball unique to you?
I wouldn't say everything, but like there's certain things that, I definitely try to do a great job in, like parenting or, with my photography. But baseball is just like an obsession. Like it's something that is a love thing for me, like from a very young age. Like I just wanted to be better and better at it. Like even right now, I still think I could be a lot better, and I could still have my best season, coming. So I just always have that mindset. There's in pitching, you feel like you're always leaving something on the table, and I don't know, there's something about challenging yourself that way that just excites me.
So what other mental game things are there? Because that's to me like my theory is that in the end, almost the entire game is mental, being your dedication or your presence on the mound, or like people don't understand that work ethic. I think everybody's like, well, work ethic is something that everybody can do. I don't think everybody can do it. I think some people think they're working as hard as they can, and other people, when they work as hard as they can, it is amazingly detailed and thorough, and they can't be beat. So help me understand some of your mental game development, and what do you think is important?
Well, that's a broad question. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of different things there. In terms of like work ethic, a lot of that's just willpower. Like I've heard the quote of like, when you want to succeed as much as you want to breathe, then you'll succeed. I've always felt that way with baseball. Like my life, it's not in balance all the time because of baseball. Like in my life, I've gotten more balanced over time, but for me, it's always been like, if I'm not performing the way I want to in baseball, like things aren't okay. Like, like I need to keep pushing. I need to figure that out. I need to like rest that in my mind. So, I mean, I've gotten a lot better at dealing with failures and stuff like that. That's something I learned through mental game work over my career, understanding that the failure is like kind of where you learn the lessons that will propel you more forward. But I think that from a work ethic standpoint, that's just ingrained in me. I don't know what other guys do. Like, I'm not very showy about all the work I put in, but I just feel like that's just part of my day. Like, I don't feel satisfied unless I've gotten what I need to get out of each day. Like, if we have an off day in a road city, I usually try to go to the stadium and throw that day or work out that day or do what I ever have to do that day. So when I go back to the hotel or go out to dinner, like, I feel like I've earned it. Like, I feel like I've earned my right to relax now. If I just wake up and try to do nothing all day, it just doesn't sit right with me. So I think that's the work ethic part of it. In terms of other stuff, like, there's so many things in terms of the mental side of baseball that really push you forward. Like, for me, one that really stands out is the concept of, like, knowing your pitches are going to go where you want them to, or hoping that they're going to go where you want them to. And I think when I was in the minor leagues, I had a really hard time with that. I was, like, really having a hard time trusting that I was good still. And so when I would go out in the game, I was kind of hoping for success, and I was not really keyed in on each individual pitch the way I needed to be. And then one day I was watching a basketball game, and it was the Thunder were playing, and Kevin Durant was having a tough night. He was like 0 for 11 from the field or something. And so at halftime, they quickly, like, grabbed him before he went in the locker room, and they asked him, like, oh, you're having a tough night shooting the ball. What do you need to do in the second half? And he's like, I just need to keep doing the same thing. I always assume my next one's going to go in, so I know my next one's going to go in. And it just occurred to me that, like, I wasn't assuming my next pitch was going to be a good one. Like, I was still hoping. So, like, just very next day in catch, I just started assuming that every pitch was going to go where I wanted it to. And just that mental adjustment had nothing to do with delivery or mechanics or anything. I started seeing my control get better. And right away, like, I was able to key in on each individual pitch a lot better. So that was something that I think got me into the big leagues and kept me there for a little while, was just that simple mental adjustment right there.
Do you have to do it? Is there any reset that you have on the bump when you're out there and say you spike a couple or something like that? Is there a mental reset that you personally have to say, or do you just naturally now at this point do it?
Well, I think I do it now naturally, but I think I'm always writing in my book, my mental cues, and, like, it sounds funny, but, like, in my job, I really only play for like 15 minutes. So I just tell myself, like, I'm strong enough to have absolute focus for those 15 minutes. So, like, when I'm warming up in the bullpen, like, I engage my 15 minutes of, like, perfect focus. And that's kind of what I'm telling myself is, like, there is nothing else right now except for this next pitch. So I've practiced that now over the years and kind of built that muscle, that focus muscle. And that's something that needs to be maintained. Like, you can't just forget about it and trust it for it to be there all the time. But, like, I maintain it every day in catch play and every time I throw, pretty much ever. And that kind of builds up that capacity so that I have more than 15 minutes worth of focus power, but I only need about 15 to do my job. So when I go in there, I just try to super hone in, and then it's just kind of natural for me to immediately think about the next pitch.
Do you visualize stuff at night? Say at night, you think about even developing a new pitch or something that went on in a game or a matchup that you're anticipating in the future, or are you just in the moment kind of doing that?
I think this goes in hand with, like, the next pitch mentality. Like, I try not to get too far ahead of myself thinking about any matchup that isn't imminent. I will think about the first batter I'm about to face. Like, if I know I'm coming in to face, Trey Mancini or somebody like that, like, then while I'm warming up, I'll definitely visualize him. But I have a hard time visualizing with my eyes closed. I do a better job visualizing with my eyes open, like looking 60 feet away from me, wherever I'm standing, and kind of pretending that there's a hitter there and, like, that I'm on the mound, and visualizing the shapes of my pitches, in that environment. So that's kind of how I do it. But I try not to get too far ahead of, like, what could be coming, and just I just try to key in on that first thing, because in our job in the bullpen, like you got to get that first guy out, and that sets you up for success.
So when you're out there, is your mindset chill, or is your mindset, I'm the baddest MFer on the planet, and there's no way this guy's going to hit me if I throw it where I want to throw it?
I think it's both. Like I'm kind of like relaxed, but like deadly, like at the same time. Like I definitely have that. I try to have like a cocky confidence to me when I'm out there, but not like a in your face, not like an in your face, like stomping around the mound or showing up the other team type of vibe that works for some guys. For me, it's more like I'm just here and you're going to be out really quickly before you realize it, because I'm a lot more locked in than you realize, you know?
That makes sense. Are you more of a, if you're visualizing anything, are you visualizing a swing and miss? Or are you visualizing a called strike? Obviously depends. Or are you visualizing, do you ever visualize somebody, making weak contact? Is that something that you're focused on?
Almost never weak contact. I'm generally pitching for the strikeout. There are some times where I can see how with certain swing, I can get certain type of contact, like a chopper to third or whatever. Like if I throw a two seam down and into a righty with a certain swing, I do feel like that can get me that contact that I need with a guy on first. But most of the time, I'm just thinking, how do I get to two strikes? Like I'm thinking, how do I get this first one and how do I get to the second strike? And then I feel great with two strikes about putting guys away. But like I'll take a foul ball, I'll take a called strike. There's different methods to get there, but I'm generally thinking about how do I get to two strikes? And if the guy puts it in play ahead of time, like that's his business, that's fine. But I'm just trying to get to two strikes.
Do you get a little pissed off if you're at two strikes and you throw and somebody spoils that pitch? Or is it like, you want to K somebody with two strikes. You're not wanting them to put the ball in play at all.
Yes, I'm greedy with the strikeouts. I think you have to be. I think, it's just a killer instinct type of thing. Like I used to tell myself, like, you got to smell the blood in the water, like you're a shark or something, like when you get to two strikes. And I just think I always struck out a lot of guys like growing up and stuff. So that was just something that it just kind of defined the way I like to pitch. So definitely sometimes if a guy reaches out and like hits a weak grounder, like, yeah, I'm happy I didn't give up a base runner, but I'm also like, damn, like it would have been nice to add another strikeout there. I just think that's the nature of how I am out there, just a little greedy with the strikeouts.
Well, I think it also, like, to me, that's the mano y mano type thing of baseball. That's a 1 or a 0, right? Either they beat you or you beat them. And a strikeout to me is the ultimate 0. So that's your goal, right? I mean, it's almost like a cage match at that point.
Yeah. I just think, it just feels good. It feels good. And especially like, I know when I first got to the big leagues, like I used to take special pride in striking out like superstar players. Cause it's just like, maybe he'll pay, like people pay attention to that. So I just, I think strikeouts are probably the most glamorous thing you can do as a pitcher.
Well, I mean, other than like making it on PitchingNinja, I guess, which,
yeah.
Which, I mean, you get featured a ton, and it's because your stuff is just flat out filthy, not only individually, but I love pairing pitches together. Like I love taking your two seamer and your slider and pairing it together, because it just looks impossible to hit when you look at it that way. Do you visually think of it that way? Are you thinking of it as a tunnel off the plate? You want your two seamer to run and your slider to break away. How do you visually look at those pitches working together?
Well, I think like with those two pitches, they're working together in a number of ways. I think obviously they break opposite directions, which is nice. But they have a lot of movement to them. So they're not necessarily I'm not always able to, my game isn't always tunneling them. Sometimes it's kind of opposite of tunneling. Like if I throw something that starts way over towards, I guess it would be the third base side, towards a right-handed hitter, and then breaks back to the middle. And I start something way off the plate, not way, but off the plate to the other side, and it comes back to the plate. That's kind of like an opposite of a tunnel effect where, it's just kind of another way to use it. Instead of starting them right down the middle and having them split off, it's just kind of like starting them both, like, so the plate feels huge to the hitter, because he can't necessarily let go of anything that starts out as a ball. And I just think that's nice, because maybe I can get some bad swings.
Do you ever talk to hitters about having, what they're thinking about when they approach you?
Yeah, of course. Over the years, that's always a question, because, I played in the NL West for 7 years. So it was always the question of like, well, this is like my 30th at bat for Goldschmidt. Like, what would you be thinking if you were him? This has been the last 5 times. So it's great to get the feedback. I had really good hitting teammates in Colorado who were smart guys, Charlie Blackmon and Arenado, et cetera. So they were able to kind of break down maybe what they'd be thinking about. And, it just kind of helps you understand, when do I need to go with a different plan, or when can I stick to my same plan? And I think that's kind of the game within the game when you face guys over and over again.
Are you working on, well, let's go through do you have a baseball at all? You can borrow mine. I'll hand it to you if you don't.
I have one.
Cool. I would love to see your pitch grips, and also anything that you're working on. I hear rumors about stuff that you're trying to either shape your slider or develop a different kind of a different shaped pitch. But we can start with your two-seamer and slider, and then anything else, any color you want to give along the way. That's cool.
All right. So my fastball, I used to throw 4-seamers and 2-seamers, and I'll still throw the occasional 4-seamer if I feel like a guy is like a crazy level of take on a fastball first pitch. I'll try to throw a 4-seamer, hold back the 2-seam a little bit. But anyway, that's not important. My 2-seam grip is like this. So I am on this seam like everybody else would be, but instead of being on this seam, I'm over here on the leather. So basically, this is just something that I found out from using the camera that kind of confirmed something I had noticed in catch play, whereas just with the way I throw, everything does kind of cut initially out of my hand. But when I'm over here on this seam, this power pulling down this seam kind of overwhelms it, and it's too cutterish, and it can't start to get in that wake and come back. So keeping this finger off the seam there and onto the leather keeps it coming out of my hand a little more true that way, and allows the movement to take place.
And what does the axis look like out of your hand? So what do you like based on Edgertronic? What type of spinner you got?
It's gonna come out kind of like on this angle, with the smooth side open over here. And it just kind of comes back. Now I can get under it a little more and kind of keep it up higher, because I get decent spin rate on my 2-seam. And then I can get a little more over it. The issue is sometimes when I get a little more on top of this pitch, it doesn't come back as much. It just kind of goes down, like straight in the ground. So for me, it's a little easier if I stay with my wrist a little more neutral behind the ball, and kind of like have it come out more like head level, as opposed to like trying to really drive it down. Years ago, when I used to be a starter, I would definitely try to drive the ball down a little more and get grounders and stuff. But now it's much more about kind of using that left to right movement.
Gotcha. I was going to ask that question. So you're not looking at it as a sinker ground ball pitch. You're looking at it as a swing and miss horizontal type pitch.
Yeah, and like a lot of called strikes too. Like the ability to throw a ball to strike on that corner has netted me a lot of called strikes, and those are very valuable because obviously it's one less chance they have to put the barrel on it. So I like called strikes a lot. But I will try to sometimes go down and in with the 2-seam to the righty, because I think that's a pretty good ground ball pitch. But yeah, for the most part, I'm not looking for contact.
Cool. And now your slider grip.
Slider grip. I've shown this one on the internet to MLB Network, I guess, before. I'm just like over in the corner here.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm not like traditional this way. It's like as if you were going to throw a four seamer, but then you just go all the way in the corner. And I get my finger right in this little hook spot here. And then my thumb kind of like does like I get this bone kind of jammed in here. So I have a ton of pressure and I'm all the way on the right side of the ball. So when I release it, I don't think turn it or anything. I just think come right down through it, get my hand out front. And then when you can see on the camera, it's just like I get really on the right side. So that's the thing, is I just think that I'm able to leverage a lot of pressure and tension into the ball, and I'm on the extreme right side of the ball, and that's what makes it come out and head straight left. I don't think it's necessarily a grip thing. I think it's just that this grip allows me to get maximum like squeeze into the corner, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's interesting. The thumb part's kind of interesting to me because you're not tucking it, you're not having the pad of your thumb. It's more of the bone or knuckle part on the side of it.
Yeah, it's this knuckle right here, like not even a knuckle, but it's like where your thumb joint goes on the inside of it. I just kind of like wedge it in there, and my thumb kind of joints back like that, and I just kind of wedge it in there, and that gives me a little extra squeeze and extra pressure. I think a big key to breaking pitches is just tension on the ball. So I just try to create as much tension as I possibly can. And like I said, I don't do a lot of wrist stuff because I think it's harder to be consistent that way. So I just try to pull down out front and let the grip kind of do it. Because with me, it'll just kind of slide my hand off to the right of the ball and send it left. But I think I could create the same type of effect with other grips. It's just a matter of that grip. I feel like I can get the most pressure.
Gotcha. And can you shape that?
This grip is tougher to shape. And so that's something I've run into the last few years. Like I have a bunch of different breaking ball grips and a bunch of different breaking balls that I was using. Like at one point I was definitely throwing 3 types of breaking balls, all the time, like going back to 15. That's really what I was doing. But what ended up happening was after I came back from Tommy John, I just started having a lot of success with this one breaking pitch, like the horizontal sweeping breaking pitch. And I just kind of kept going to it. And then the other ones got less and less comfortable. And now that we're several years removed from that, I've tried other things, but I kind of realized that it would be really nice to have something with a little more depth to it. Because right now what happens is if I want the pitch to end up below the zone, the way it breaks is so straight right and left, I have to start it really low. And if you start it low, there's almost no chance they're going to swing at it because it's already low out of my hand. So I need something that would start a little more, hittable in the zone to then go low to induce the swing. So that's what I'm back on now, is like just getting back to utilizing some of my other grips and my other types of pitches, more slurve and curve and power slider type thought processes that I used to use. And that's what I've been on pretty much this offseason, is just getting back to having those weapons too.
So what would that look like? Like what do you change to do that?
So like a basic curveball grip, just like I'm just right here and just stay here.
Getting to the front?
Just get to the front. There's nothing special about that. And then I have a slurve grip, which is just like a traditional grip. But on this one, I don't try to turn it all. I just try to think over the ball. And I can create like a bullet spin downward. That's like more of a harder downward slider. And then I also throw a cutter, which I've been throwing for a few years, which is kind of like off of my slider. I just like move this finger over. So it's just like a harder version because my pointer finger's more in the center of the ball. So I can get more power through the ball. So basically the idea is like, at this point in my career, like I've tried a lot of different things, but it's time to face facts once again that basically I'm a breaking ball pitcher. Like those are my primary pitches. And it's nice to have as many of them as you can have, because if you're going to just throw breaking balls all the time, I don't want them to be able to anticipate the shape of them every time. I want them to be like, oh, that's spin, that's breaking ball, but they can't be totally sure where it'll end up. Will it have more depth this time? Will it have more sweep this time? Will it be a little harder? Will it be a little slower? I want to have all those variables work in my favor. And one issue I've had the last 2 or 3 seasons is that, I've thrown so many of my sweeping sliders that I've actually gotten better at keeping it more like consistent. So like the shape is almost the same now on all of them. And I think that while that might be a nice trick, it's not as good when facing major league hitters, because they're really good at recognizing shapes and patterns, especially if you see 3 of them in an at bat, you're going to make that adjustment.
Yeah, that's a couple of interesting points. One of them being, it used to be that it was always establish the fastball, then you can go to your breaking pitches. Now we've come to realize breaking pitches are really hard to hit anyway, but even a major league hitter, once they've seen it a bunch, is going to make that adjustment to pick it up. And even the best breaking balls aren't going to get they'll either lay off it or they'll be able to make it opposite way or something like that. So you constantly have to evolve.
Yes, I'm a big believer in that. And I think it's a lot easier to evolve after you struggle a little bit, because then it becomes clear as day what you need to do. I think it's a little tougher when you're in the middle of a good run of success and you want to stay ahead of it to kind of understand what to do. I think that's a little trickier, because part of you is like, well, let's just keep going, and part of you is like, if I want to try something else. But then if you don't have success there, you feel like an idiot for trying that. So, it's a little tougher when you're in a great run of success to maybe evolve. I think it's a little easier coming off of, a time period where like you learned a lesson, in a negative way.
So when you were mentioning earlier how, you can tunnel it, or you have them go the opposite, or you can funnel it, or have them do various shapes of it that you can visualize and actually do. How well do you think hitters pick up spin?
Not very well. I think they know something is different. Like they know generally what fastballs look like, and I think they know generally what breaking ball spin looks like. But I don't think that they pick it up nearly as well as we assume. I've had a lot of this talk. I've had a lot of talks with really good hitters about it. What are they seeing? Sometimes they talk about seeing colors, or talk about seeing just something that just triggers in them. Oh, that's a slider. But also the higher spin you have, the more blurry the ball is. And so that's an effect that I'm trying to use to my advantage now. Or like with all of these breaking pitches that I'm trying to throw now, I'm throwing them at least at 2,800 RPM, if not higher. So they're all going to be kind of blurry. And I feel like I can use that to my advantage in terms of having the multiple shapes of the pitches. Like they might know, okay, something about that tells me a breaking ball, but again, like they don't know exactly what direction it's about to head in.
And the other thing, so can you tell in the middle of an at bat when a hitter, like even just body language wise, when they're ready for that, you feel like they're on you, like you feel like they are comfortable out there, and can you make that adjustment kind of on the fly, or are you going to make that adjustment on the fly with these different shapes?
Yeah, I think all that stuff is really easy to see when you're locked in and you can make any pitch you want. Then when you're not so internally focused. When you're more externally focused, it's easier to kind of notice certain things, like, oh, the hitter was really proud of that take he just had, or that foul ball, like he felt like he should have squared that one up. And I can tell that he's going to make an adjustment to the next one, or you can also sometimes tell when the guy's just mystified by the pitch. But I think that, that's something that I'm very acutely aware of when I'm pitching, is kind of trying to read the hitter. And I'm not always right, but I try to read the hitter as much as I can, and then make my best decision, afterwards about what I think, the next pitch should be.
And circling back, don't you feel like that's somewhat photography? I mean, you're looking at every little detail of the thing that you're either taking a picture of or attacking, but you're able to make those little, so you can notice those subtle nuances and use it to your advantage in either one of those.
Yeah, I think, maybe it's hard to say how much of it is truly because of the photography, but I just think paying attention to guys' body language and kind of aggregating all of the stuff that I've watched over time kind of can help me just quickly kind of pick up a little bit about the guy, in the moment. And then, one thing I'm always constantly trying to figure out, even when I'm watching on video, is like, is this the type of guy that's going to play the dance with me and he's going to try to think through every pitch with me? Or is this the type of guy that's going to sit on one thing and stay committed to it? Or is this the type of guy who see the ball, hit the ball? It helps me a lot if I know the psychology of the hitter. And it's not always apparent, but I spend a lot of time trying to figure that stuff out because that's going to have a big impact on whether I switch up what I'm doing or not.
So is it almost like putting yourself in the hitter's shoes based on what you're picking up from them, or is it something else?
I just try to look into their soul a little bit. A lot of guys I've played with have heard me say that, but I just feel like I try to look right into their soul and try to decide what they're going to do, and then react off of that. Obviously, I already know all the areas of safety, from the heat maps and all that, but that calculus all goes together real quick. But then also I will try to kind of look into the hitter a little bit and just decide in the moment, he's gonna go for the slider here, or he's gonna, he's on the heater right now or whatever.
How big are heat maps to you?
I think they're useful. I mean, the big thing is for me is more so where do I want to throw my fastball in this guy? I think being that my fastball can get hit sometimes when I make mistakes with it, I definitely try to stay in the areas that are a little safer. Usually, though, the heat maps do match up with the swing paths. When I first got to the big leagues, I took a master class in swing path reading from some of the older guys, and basically that's how I initially scouted guys. Just okay, this is the type of swing he has. These are my areas I can go. Now, obviously, the heat maps kind of just show you that right away. You don't have to do as much of the watching, I guess. But like I said, it's just nice to know where I can go. If I'm backed into a corner and I got to throw a fastball, what's my best bet? It's this blue area in this spot, and there's so many guys now that are more low ball hitters, but there's still some guys that can hit the high ball or like it inside or like it outside. I just want to keep it away from giving them what they want, whenever I can.
Gotcha. Are there any mechanical things you worked on in this off season? Is that something that you feel you've got down, or are there things that you think you can improve on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my mechanics have gotten better over the years. It's funny because I have all my strikeouts on my iPad for my whole career, and if you go through them year by year, you can see all the changes. But I think I really didn't make any changes from 18, 19, and 20. I kept the same the whole way. And this year I've incorporated a little bit of a counter rotation on my lift, just trying to create a little more rotational power. I was just pretty much exclusively linear the last few years. And I was having an issue last year where my upper half was getting ahead of my lower half at foot strike. And so I was costing myself a little bit of power there, but also my extension had gotten a little out of control. I always have good extension, but it had gotten to a crazy number of over 7 feet of extension on average. And I think that took away a little bit from the late action of my pitches at home plate, the last few inches at the plate. So the goal this year was to get my extension reined back into where it has been when I've been successful, but also to work on my rotational power a little bit, as well.
So that's a really interesting point, and I don't think it's something most people think about. Is everybody views extension you're narrowing the distance between the hitter, so that's got to always be a good thing. I think you're showing, or you're saying that it varies. I mean, for some people, it may be a really good thing. For other people, it may reduce the amount of time that your pitch has to move, or may change the shape of a pitch. So it really is kind of unique to that pitcher, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, my breaking ball has a lot of bite to it, but I'm really relying on a lot of it being late break, and a lot of it happening, as the guy's already swinging, kind of getting outside the end of that bat. And then same with my fastball. I want to have enough time for it to be a ball, and make it back to the plate, but just in time. And if I'm a little bit more extended on release, there's a little bit less time there for that to happen. So now I can't create as much of a comeback effect. I have to now narrow my shape a little bit to make it there, and it's maybe not as effective. So these are all just kind of hypotheses still, but I think that I was on a pretty good run there prior to last season, and that was one thing that did change. So that's something that I wanted to kind of revert back to if I could.
And was it more of a coaching staff pickup or you picked it up?
I picked it up by looking at the numbers because I said something's different about my stuff this year. I couldn't tell what it was. I picked up on it pretty early, but I wasn't really able to make the adjustment until I had already kind of struggled. So once I made the adjustment, I felt a lot better about it going into the off season, and then I was able to implement a little bit of that counter rotation I was talking about. But it was something that I noticed pretty early. Like, even though I was having some success at the beginning of the season, I was like, something's different, you know, and it was hard to tell what it was because I was like, I feel like I'm doing everything the same. But, you know, a lot of it was I was doing a lot of drills past few years of trying to get over my front leg. Like, I was doing a lot of drills up the mound. And being that I'm a cross body pitcher, it's always been important for me to get over that front leg and not get stuck behind there. So I was doing those drills for about 3 years. And I think what ended up happening was I just got like almost too good at it, where like I was like leaping over my front leg and I was kind of abandoning my whole backside. So, you know, one thing about pitching that's strange is you can kind of get into a good habit, you can get into a bad habit, sometimes without even knowing it. And that's kind of, I think, what happened there.
Yeah. And the funny thing also about pitching is efficient mechanics don't always mean getting somebody. It's like sometimes it's the deception part. It's your ability to throw across your body or do whatever that you may say, you know, technically he should be doing this or that, like by the book, but that
Yeah,
doesn't mean that it's going to work on a hitter.
100%. I mean, look, I'm early in my career when I was with the Cardinals, there was a big effort to get me to be more straight to home plate and, you know, more efficient with my delivery. And I felt like it helped some things and it really hurt some other things. And ultimately, like, it really hurt my breaking ball, but also really hurt my deception. And I got a lot of feedback from hitters who were like, you're a lot scarier the way you used to throw, you know, stepping right at me and stuff like that. So eventually I just kind of took control of my own career, went back to being a little more cross body, and the success just like started coming again overnight because of that move. So it was one of those things where, you know, I want to be successful. I don't want to just be successful on like a projection. I want to be successful in reality. So I had to kind of listen to what the hitters were talking about at that point and go that way.
Yeah, and that's a really good other point about taking charge of your career, because I think a lot of kids when they're growing up, they let their coach kind of run their career because, you know, hey, I'm going to do that. I'm a people pleaser. And I think some players will do that even up to whatever. They think if they obey the coach, that it's going to mean that they're going to get more time or the coach is going to like them. But at
Yeah.
some point, it's all about, like, you're your own business, you're your own person, it's your career, no one else's. So taking ownership of it, it seems like more pitchers should do that.
Yeah, it's also the only thing that's really like sustainable because you're not going to have the same coaches all the time and to constantly check you. And like now I'm on my fourth team. So I see now that I'm already bringing my own knowledge of what I do to the table. I'm not coming here like saying, oh, maybe these coaches are going to help me. You know, it's more so like, here's what I've been working on and let's see what you got for me and let's put our minds together. But like, this is all like, I've come with like my briefcase full of all my past stuff in it already because I've been paying attention to it. So for me, that was like a big thing. I think I was pretty good at coaching myself until I got to pro ball. And then I had like a little bit of a imposter syndrome type thing come in where I was thinking, well, there must be so much I don't know. So I better listen to everything these coaches have for me. And I think, you know, they were all trying to help me, but I think ultimately it's hard when you're just listening to feedback from a coach and I don't have any visual thing to accompany it. But at that time, we weren't videoing everything. There wasn't metrics on everything. I was just kind of going off of suggestions. And so I was so internally focused that I just like couldn't get out of my own way. And it wasn't until later when I eventually got to Colorado that I was like, okay, I need to like really know what I want to do and like just do it my way or I'll just go home. So eventually I was able to like start videoing everything, look at myself on my film all the time and check out what was working, what wasn't working. And that was just a huge adjustment. I wish I would have done it a lot earlier.
Yeah, and actually what you're saying, so when you take ownership of something, when it's you, you tend to, I mean, there's a confidence thing. There's a, you can manipulate things and feel better about it. When you're doing something that a coach tells you, it's almost like it's out of your hands, and having your mechanics out of your hands, having your way of attacking somebody out of your hands, having anything in your life totally out of your hands. I don't know that that's like, I think you get invested in it a little less or something.
Yeah, I think there's something to that too. Like, I think like I couldn't ever fully, like, even when I was doing the suggestions from the other coaches had, I don't know that I was ever like fully committed to them. So I was like doing them, and maybe I was like not 100% sure. So like now I'm throwing pitches without conviction, and which is like rule number one, don't do that. And I don't know, it was just tricky. It was just tricky. I mean, no disrespect to anybody who coached me. I feel like they were all trying to really help me, but I just think pitching is so individual that, when I was finally able to really look at myself and really critique it, I was able to see things that were obvious to me because I had the experience of being myself, whereas other guys hadn't seen my whole career and hadn't seen my whole arc. So it was just easier for me to look at it and see things on my own rather than asking around all the time.
Now, here's a weird question, and you don't have to, it doesn't have to jump out at you or not, but what's the best pitch you've ever thrown? Like, what's the pitch that you sat there and go, that did exactly what I wanted to? And it's just, is there anything that jumps out at you?
Well, I mean, for me, I pitched in the wild card game against the Cubs a couple of years ago, and I got into trouble. I think I like walked the first guy right away. It was a 1-0 game. I was so nervous. And I was so much adrenaline. I'd never been in a playoff game. All of a sudden I'm in a 1-0 game. And I come in the game, there's already a guy on base. And I think it was like a walk. And then there was a catcher's interference on what should have been the third out. So now there's bases loaded and I'm facing Hayward. And I think I fall behind him 2-0. So this is the type of thing, like that could be it right there. But I think what I'm most proud of is like not only that I came back and got the strikeout in that at bat, but it was just the way that I was able to do it. Like I was able to throw a backdoor breaking ball right on the corner, in a situation where it was pretty hard to have my best feel at that moment. So I think I threw a 2-1 backdoor slider for a strike, which set up my fastball to strike him out. That 2-1 backdoor slider, that's the most clutch pitch I've ever thrown. Just because, given the circumstances and the way I was feeling, that I was able to mentally get through that and control my body through my mind in that moment, make that pitch. That's everything that I've been practicing for my whole life. So to me, that was just like indicative of all of like 25 years of work, was just that one pitch.
That's awesome. And finally, what are you looking forward to this year with Boston? I mean, obviously, New York guy up there. What has struck you as being cool, fun, and what are you looking forward to with the team?
I'm looking forward to having a bigger role with this team, possibly getting a shot at the ninth. Looking for an opportunity to start innings fresh and be trusted a little bit more and just go out there and kind of pitch my complete game. I had a great time being with the Yankees, but I do feel like this is a little bit of a better opportunity for me career-wise, right now, to kind of just go out there and do my thing and not have to think about roles so much. So I'm excited about that on a personal level. And then also just team-wise, like I've been impressed so far with the way they've been running things. I think we're going to be a little better than people are giving us credit for. And I'm excited to watch a lot of these guys play that I haven't been able to see play every day, but now I get that privilege. So just excited. I'm a huge baseball fan. So the chance to see like Bogarts play short every day, I'm excited for stuff like that.
Well, I'm excited to watch you. You're always one of those guys that when he comes in, I drop everything and take a look at your stuff, as you've noticed, because you get featured a lot, even though you say you don't follow social media all that much. But I am very excited to watch you this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing these different shaped pitches too. So that's going to be a lot of fun. If you need anything during the season, anything jumps out at you, you want to, take a look at anybody's grips, whatever it is, I'm happy to help out. And when you shut somebody down and you're fist pumping or doing whatever, I'm going to have you back on and do a little quick one. So,
okay. Thank
cool,
you.
Man. Well, take care. This is great.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Strike 3!